Hi all, welcome back to Make More Bonsai. John here. This here tree is an end game of what we're going to be doing today. I mean, is there really an end game when it comes to bonsai, really? I guess what I'm getting at is, let's zoom in on this a little bit. See those windy curves that are expressive and make that sublime trunk really kind of hit the spot? One thing that really makes a bonsai exciting is an awesome looking trunk. You could spend lots of time searching for a tree with a trunk that you think will be suitable for a bonsai, or more to the point, your bonsai. It's a very personal thing. Selecting a tree with a trunk you think you'll love, it can come with lots of compromises, which can also be fun and worth pursuing as an artist. But what if you could take full control and design the trunk of your bonsai that fully expresses all of your personal artistic dreams? Let's explore actually designing an interesting trunk on a bonsai with no compromises. If we take a closer look, we can see there are some interesting curves built into it that twist and coil in a natural way that changes direction in all three dimensions, moving around back and forth with texture that can capture the eye. It looks as if nature influenced the different bends over time. These contortions don't happen normally when you grow a tree in a pot or in your garden. It would simply stretch upward with a fairly straight trunk. An outside influence would be required to make such drastic direction changes, like constant wind or being crushed with snow or maybe animals grazing. In order to achieve this look and feel with an affordable bonsai stock or homegrown trees, we'll need to apply a mechanical method while it's still young and flexible. This tree is about 15 years old now. Those bends were created when it was about 2 to 3 years old, while it was still small and flexible, and made to look and feel much older and communicate a story of age and strength. The method used to create the trunk was the application of wire to the tree, then bending the trunk to the desired shape. That wire can be made of aluminum, which is soft enough to bend easily but can hold branches in shape long enough for the branch to firm up in that shape, or annealed copper wire, which is soft at first but once bent becomes really firm to hold the position in place. Let's look at some basic wiring techniques that will help get this party started. When applying the wire, be sure it makes contact with the trunk or branch. To do this, one hand holds the wire in place while the other wraps the wire. Loop the wire around the trunk or branch, trying to maintain an even 45 to 55 degree angle between each pass. The wire shouldn't be pulled tight, just resting on the surface. A few gaps are okay as long as the majority of the wire is making good contact. The trunk or branch should not be used for any leverage. All of the work and pressure should be done with your hand supporting the wire while making every attempt to not damage the bark while applying the wire. When one full loop is finished, the support hand moves to the new coil like this. Complete loop, hand moves up. Complete loop, hand moves up, and so on. The degree of angle of the wire will assist with maintaining the energy of the bend you apply, and because there is that spread of an even 45 to 55 degrees between each coil, the wire will also spread the energy needed to hold it in place over a wide area. If the wire were coiled close together like a spring, there wouldn't be enough friction and leverage to hold the shape. Too wide, like over 60 degrees or so, and there isn't enough actual wire to spread the energy well enough to hold. 45 to 55 degrees is the correct balance of spacing to gain the most control over the bend. The result of this will be a neat, even, consistent application of wire making plenty of firm contact with the trunk or branch. Awesome! Now, what if we want to wire a few branches? An important thing to remember is the wire needs a firm connection to have effective leverage for a bend to be successful and hold. To accomplish this, it's best to attach the wire to another branch so there's enough opposite leverage to maintain the energy and friction to bend a branch and have it hold. For this, place your wire, and in this case, the trunk is also wired, alongside that existing wire and follow the coil to connect one branch. Then apply the wire to the second branch. Now you have a strong connection to an opposite leverage point and plenty of friction and energy to be dispersed along the wire to hold a bend. Okay, so what if there isn't another branch to wire? Or maybe you only want to bend one branch and leave the other alone. You can attach the wire to the trunk with 2 or more coils to gain enough leverage to hold the branch you want to bend, or you can use the leverage of the base of another branch by creating a hook on one end of the wire with some pliers, attach it to the base of the opposing branch, then wrap the wire over the branch you wish to bend. When and how do we remove the wire? When the tree grows and the branch or trunk thickens and begins to push against the wire and start to grow over it, this is called cutting in. When the wire is cutting into the bark a bit, it's time to consider removing the wire. This can take weeks to months or years depending on the growth rate of the tree. It's best to check in on wired branches often, especially when the tree is actively growing, to see if it needs to be removed. You can unwrap the wire from the end of the branch, checking to see if the branch holds in place. Carefully remove the wire without damaging any new growth. If the wire is too thick or stiff to unwrap, you can use wire cutters and clip the wire on the outside of each curve to remove it in sections. Bonsai wire cutters are designed so you can place the end of the cutter right up to the branch and clip without digging into the bark. Those were some useful basic wiring techniques to get started and add to your bonsai skill set. Let's see what we can do with these skills. This little juniper is about 2.5 years old, grown from a cutting. It's matured enough to show signs that the tree is growing well and building up foliage so it can really get going and expand. New cuttings can take a year or two to get established when they're first planted. Once they acquire enough foliage, you can see the difference in behavior in the tree. It's creating 2 to 3 inch long shoots of new foliage because all of the water movement and energy production through photosynthesis is finally up and running since it was first planted as a cutting. If this wiring were attempted too soon, this plant may struggle and the entire operation may fail. Wire up and bend this tree with all of that energy flowing and it'll be like, hold my beer, I got this. That is the state you want your tree in when you do this kind of major design work. A few bends in the trunk will barely have an effect on its health, and once those bends are firm, it's really going to push upwards and outwards to make more foliage that will accelerate its growth even more. Setting this tree on this course will only take about a half an hour of interaction, but this investment will raise the value of any design work done in the future. We start by clearing away any small growth to reveal the trunk and branches. What we are really trying to do is make some room for the wire. While this is getting cleared, let's explore this concept. This begins what will be kind of a partnership among me, or you, the designer and caretaker of the tree itself and all of the internal processes it possesses to grow and do its thing, and time, meaning the passage of time between our interaction with the design process and the time it takes for the tree itself to respond to the interactions. Each partner plays a role performing tasks to achieve this goal. Our role in this partnership right now is we are changing the dynamic motion and direction of the trunk with the future in mind, for when it thickens and those bends become closer together and more impossible looking. The tree's role will be grow and thicken. Use as many resources available to gain strength. Our other partner, time, also has a role. After we're done, time will be the most active partner for as long as it takes for the trunk to reach a satisfying look. The amount of time really depends on the volume of resources available to it to grow. If it's in a small pot, it will take up to 10 years to grow and thicken. Increase the pot size or plant it in the ground to improve the availability of resources, and that time period will be much shorter. With the trunk all cleared out, we can start applying wire. To start wiring the trunk, I'm choosing some copper wire about 1/3 the thickness of the trunk. This should be enough to hold it in place. If not, we can always add a second wire. Insert the wire into the soil to give it a firm gripping point. Remember to hold that wire with one hand as you wrap it around the trunk. If you don't, you risk that wire tearing through the roots in the soil, and that would be bad times. Keeping a firm hold on that wire will prevent that from happening, which is good times. Let's add that second wire to the base of the trunk to add support to any bend to the lowest part of the trunk, but this time guided over one of the branches. Using a slightly smaller gauge wire, let's apply some wire to some more of the branches. It's important to be careful not to wire down any of the foliage while applying the wire. Let's remind ourselves that the focus of this activity is not to create a finished bonsai. These actions are to begin to add depth and range to the trunk for a potential bonsai sometime in the future. The techniques are the same if we were planning to design the structure of a bonsai, but in this case we're only concerned with creating an interesting trunk, a trunk that you as the designer have control over the look and feel. So now what? Let's look at the coils of the wire and identify where the outside of each coil is. These points are ideal for the outside of a bend. The wire that is over the outside of the bend will prevent that section from breaking. Let's take a moment to talk about what happens when you perform a bend when styling a bonsai. When you perform a bend, you are injuring the cellular tissue in that section you are bending. The outside of the bend stretches the tissue and the inside compresses the tissue. This triggers the tree to send resources to those areas to repair and rebuild. If we take a look at the inner workings of the branch or trunk, we can get a better understanding of what is happening. There are 3 layers surrounding the core wood of the tree throughout. The inside layer is called xylem, which brings water and resources up through the tree. The outside layer is called phloem. Phloem transports nutrients created through photosynthesis down through the tree. And between them is a layer called cambium. This is the layer of cells that creates all of the things the tree needs, such as leaf buds, roots, new cells, that contribute to the creation of fresh xylem and phloem. The cambium cell divides, leaving behind fresh xylem and pushing out fresh phloem. This thickens the tree as it grows. When an area is damaged, like from bending, the cambium divides more aggressively to repair the area and get it functioning like it used to. This action creates more xylem, cambium, and phloem in that area, fattening and stiffening it to repair the damage. Over time, the damage is completely healed, and the excess of cells created contribute to the area retaining the shape it was manipulated into in the first place. You can see when the bend has taken a firm hold when you see the growth beginning to consume the wire. Now that we're all really in the know, let's get to the fun part. When bending the trunk, be sure to support the rest of the tree with your other hand, and with that hand, feel for any signs of stress. The soft cracking sound is okay as long as it's on the inside, but it is a warning sign of it possibly breaking, so proceed with caution. The wire makes use of that energy you're applying and helps spread it out over the wire and the rest of the branch. The first bend is really low on the trunk. This bend that's within the first inch of the trunk will help reinforce the natural effect of the design. It's common for trees that are designed much later in life to not have a curve so close to the base of the trunk. Since the wood is too stiff to accommodate such a bend, we can take advantage of that opportunity at this time to establish some hard to produce trunk angles because the tree is so young and flexible. We're already making great improvements and we could stop here, but if we look at that older trunk again, we can see some other quality bends that are so close together at such acute angles that really give that trunk the feeling that they occurred naturally since they're so extreme when viewed in proportion to the size of the trunk. Those bends were much wider apart when the tree was 2 years old, but as it grew and thickened, they're all much tighter together now. Let's make a few of those bends now. This next bend will also add a slight twist, maybe 20 or 30 degrees in the direction of the coils of the wire. When you apply a slight twist when you're bending a branch, you're extending the distance you can bend because that twist is also absorbing the energy of the bend along with the wire. That twist will also turn the direction of the live vein of the juniper's vascular system with it. It's why that shari is in that coiled twisted shape on the older tree. It helps add the extra dimension as well. That twisting motion also allows you to extend and add a bit more to a bend than if you were to just directly bend a branch straight along a single plane. Try to limit these twist motions to around 20 degrees per bend. If you move further along the same branch, you can also add an additional 20 to 30 degree plane change. When making these bends in the trunk, it's important to be mindful not to make a spiral, like a spring. The bends should place the trunk a bit in one direction, then change the plane forward or backward, then reinforce the design by not returning the bend back to where it originated, but instead move it further backward or forward or in the same direction of the original bend. This mindset will help avoid an even spring-like spiral and lead the design into a less symmetrical, more natural look and feel. Be mindful also of the outside of each of the coils of the wire. These will help guide your decisions as well as make sure your bends have the support needed to prevent a full break in the branch. Small cracks and exposed green cambium will heal over time, so those are okay. It's also a good time to maybe shape some of those lower branches that most likely will become a jin. A pleasing bend and twist to the live vein will make those future jin look very awesome and high quality. The end result of all of this activity will compress the length of the trunk into a tighter mass of multi-directional bends that should feel random, irregular, and natural. That trunk will have really attractive direction changes that will enhance the tree when it's more mature. So much of bonsai is enjoying the process and thinking and planning for something 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, and even 10 years into the future. This is where our involvement turns over within the partnership. The tree will take over and recover from all of this activity. Over that time, it will add girth to the bends as the cambium does its thing to repair those injuries. In a few months, it'll be time to check in on this tree to see if the wire needs to be removed. Once the wire is removed, time will take the lead with only occasional check-ins to see if maybe some opportunities to enhance the design become possible, or to gradually increase the pot size or plant it in the ground to give the tree more resources. Now, for a little bit of aftercare advice over the next bunch of years this tree will be allowed to grow out, our desired end result of this process is a thick, contorted trunk with some attractive compact foliage. If we were to trim this juniper back to keep the foliage compact, the new tree will grow, of course, but the actual thickening of the trunk will reflect the reduced foliage mass, and thicken slowly, extending the time it will take to get to the fun part, making a groovy bonsai tree. Junipers get most of their strength and energy from foliage, so logic tells us Okay, so let lots of foliage grow out like crazy, and the sheer amount will of course thicken my trunk, and now we're on top of the world. But if we were to let this juniper grow out over the years, the branches will extend and the foliage will also be extended further and further away from the central trunk. This will present the challenge of encouraging compact foliage later, once again extending the time it will take to get to the fun part, making a groovy bonsai tree. There is a way to make the best of the situation and achieve a thick trunk and compact foliage within a reasonable time. This is where the partnership swings back into our hands. Over time, allow the lower branches expected to become jin to grow up and out. Any branches that may also become jin can also be allowed to grow out and lengthen. Try to keep any foliage that is expected to remain on the finished bonsai trimmed and compact. As those branches that are allowed to extend longer, well past the main tree area lengthen, remove any foliage that will block the light to the interior you wish to preserve, and encourage the continued expansion of foliage mass on those extensions. This will accomplish the necessary vascular activity that will thicken the trunk and speed up the eventual development of a refined bonsai with compact foliage on that interior base portion of the tree. When the trunk has finally reached its full potential of awesomeness, then it's time to remove those extensions or maybe air layer them and make a few more trees if you're particularly inspired to accumulate even more trees to expand your bonsai-rificness. Either way, by doing this, you have shaved years, if not decades, off of the development time to create that awesome bonsai with that dream-inspired trunk. I like to create a few of these every year if I can. This way I have some fun projects that will keep things interesting for years down the road. It's a great way to set yourself up for future success. While you're waiting for this little project to mature, think of all of the practice and experience you accumulate while waiting. When the tree is ready for styling, you'll come back with a fresh attitude and refined skills, and that leads to good times while making more bonsai. Thanks for watching. I hope you gained some helpful insights from this little video. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share or want to add to the conversation, any comments will be greatly appreciated. Seriously, I seem to have a lot of free time while waiting for these trees to do their thing. While you're at it, maybe like and subscribe, or possibly check out the book or the t-shirt links in the comments below, because bonsai stuff is kinda cool, and so are you for helping support this channel. See you next time.